The gates of the Muthaiga estate swung open, revealing a mansion that screamed old money. I smoothed my dress, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Beside me, Silas squeezed my hand, though his eyes remained fixed on the mahogany front door. We were here for the annual Ngugi family dinner, and it was my official introduction. When we entered, the scent of expensive jasmine and floor wax hit me. At the head of the table sat Mama Beatrice. She didn't rise. She merely peered over her gold-rimmed spectacles, her gaze sweeping over my modest outfit with visible disdain. The silence stretched until it became a physical weight in the room. "Silas," she finally spoke, her voice like sandpaper on silk, "I thought you understood the lineage of this family. We are the architects of this city's skyline. Why have you brought this person into my dining room?" "Mother, this is Elena, my wife," Silas said, his voice trembling slightly. Mama Beatrice let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. She stood up, walking toward me until I could smell her imported perfume. "Wife? A girl from the dusty streets of Kayole with no name and no pedigree? You are a nobody, Elena. In this house, you are less than the dirt on my gardener's boots. Don't expect a seat at this table." She turned her back on me, signaling the help to serve the soup. The humiliation tasted bitterer than the wine I wasn't offered. I spent the rest of the evening standing in the foyer, watching through the archway as the royalty of Nairobi society toasted to their successes. Silas looked miserable, trapped between his mother's iron will and his love for me, but he didn't leave. He stayed seated. As I took a taxi back to our small apartment in Kilimani, I didn't cry. Instead, I looked at the reflection of the city lights in the window. Mama Beatrice thought she knew who I was because of my zip code. She didn't know that while Silas was at his prestigious law firm, I was building a ghost empire from a laptop in a corner cafe. I was the architect, not of buildings, but of digital infrastructure. I owned the proprietary software that ran the Kenyan banking switch, the very system the Ngugis group used to move their millions every single day. I had operated under a pseudonym for years, layered behind shells and offshore holdings simply because I preferred my privacy. "A nobody," I whispered to the dark interior of the cab. I opened my laptop and logged into the master terminal. The Ngugis group's credit lines were due for a standard security audit and renewal in 3 months. I leaned back, a cold smile playing on my lips. If I was a nobody, then it was time to show her what happens when a nobody decides to stop existing in her world. 3 months passed. To the Ngugi family, I remained the shameful secret. Silas had moved out to be with me, which only fueled Beatrice's rage. She sent him daily messages calling me a social climber and a parasite. She even tried to freeze his personal accounts, not realizing they were tied to the very system I controlled. The morning of the Great Fall started like any other Tuesday in Nairobi. The sun hit the KCIC building, and the traffic on Uhuru Highway was a nightmare. Inside the Ngugi Group headquarters, however, panic was erupting. Their primary transaction server had gone dark. The nobody had finally flipped the switch. Beatrice was in the middle of a board meeting when every single corporate card was declined. The payroll for 5,000 employees stalled in the cloud. By noon, their stock began to dip as rumors of a total system lockout spread through the exchange. They reached out to the software provider, only to be told the CEO was unavailable. I sat in my office, sipping black tea. My phone buzzed. It was Silas. "Elena, my mother is losing her mind. The entire family business is paralyzed. They can't even pay the electricity bill for the mansion. The providers say they need a physical meeting with the owner of Apex Systems to restore access." "Is that so?" I replied, my voice calm. Tell her I know a consultant who might be able to help, but I only work for people who know my name." The Ngugi mansion was no longer a place of power. It was a tomb of silent electronics. The air conditioning had cut out, and the heavy Nairobi heat was beginning to settle in the grand rooms. Mama Beatrice sat on her velvet sofa, sweating through her silk blouse, her phone a useless slab of glass in her hand. Her prestigious friends had stopped calling the moment the news hit that the Ngugi group was technically insolvent due to a catastrophic IT failure. The banks had frozen their assets, pending a security clearance that only one person could authorize. She was desperate. She had spent 40 years building an image of invincibility, and it was crumbling in 48 hours. "Where is this architect?" Beatrice barked at Silas. "I don't care what it costs. Offer them a seat on the board. Give them whatever they want. If we don't process the international transfers by midnight, the creditors will seize the holdings in Runda." Silas looked at his mother with a mixture of pity and exhaustion. "Mother, the owner of Apex Systems doesn't want your money. She already has more than you. She wants an apology. A public one." "An apology? To whom?" Beatrice demanded, her eyes narrowing. "To the girl from Kayole," Silas said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Beatrice's face turned a mottled shade of purple. The woman who prided herself on lineage was being asked to bow to a nobody. She realized then that the noose wasn't just around her business, it was around her pride. I sent the formal invitation via a courier in a crisp black suit. It wasn't to a beach or a flashy restaurant. It was to my headquarters, a sleek, glass-walled floor in the new Global Trade Center tower. The dress code was strictly formal. I wanted her to feel the weight of the world I had built while she was busy mocking my origins. The day of the meeting arrived. I wore a custom-tailored suit in emerald green, my hair pulled back in a sharp, professional bun. I looked every bit the woman who held the keys to the country's digital vaults. When the elevator dinged, I didn't get up. I let her wait in the reception area for exactly 45 minutes. When my assistant finally ushered her in, Beatrice looked haggard. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a frantic, wide-eyed look of a woman staring at a cliff edge. She stopped dead when she saw me sitting behind the desk. She looked around the room, searching for the real boss, refusing to believe the reality in front of her. "Elena?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What are you doing in the CEO's chair?" "I'm not in the CEO's chair, Beatrice," I said, leaning forward and interlacing my fingers. "I am the CEO. I am Apex Systems, and you are currently trespassing in my office without an appointment. However, since you're family, or at least you claim to be, I decided to give you 5 minutes of my time." Beatrice sank into the guest chair, her designer handbag clutched to her chest. You did this? You broke my company to get back at me for a dinner comment? Do you know how many lives you're ruining?" I laughed, and it sounded just as sharp as hers had months ago. "I didn't break anything. I simply withdrew my services. I don't do business with people who don't respect me. But that's not why you're really here, is it? You're here because of the heritage file I found during the system audit." Beatrice froze. The color drained from her face completely. "You talk so much about lineage and old money," I continued, tossing a folder onto the desk. "But these records show that your late husband didn't inherit the Muthaiga estate. He was the driver for the original owners, and he, let's say, acquired the deed through a very scandalous set of forged documents after the family fled during the 1980s. You aren't royalty, Beatrice. You're the daughter of a squatter who got lucky with a pen." The scandal was nuclear. If this went out, the Ngugis wouldn't just be broke, they would be social pariahs and likely face criminal charges for property theft. My nobody status was starting to look very dignified compared to her somebody status built on a lie. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine terror in her eyes. "Please," she gasped, the words sounding foreign coming from her lips. "If this gets out, we lose everything. The reputation, the house. Silas will be ashamed of his own name." "Silas already knows," I lied smoothly. I wanted her to feel isolated. "He's the one who suggested I look deeper into why you were so obsessed with pedigree. It's usually a mask for a very dirty past. Now, I have a contract here. It restores your system access and keeps your little secret buried in my private servers." She reached for the pen, but I pulled the paper back. "There's a condition," I said. "From this moment forward, I am not that girl. I am not a nobody. When we are in public, you will treat me with the deference my position deserves. And when we are in private," I paused, enjoying the moment, "you will address me as Madam Elena. You will ask for my permission before you host any family event. You will realize that I am the only reason you aren't in a jail cell." Beatrice trembled. Tears of rage and humiliation gathered in her eyes. She looked at the folder, the evidence of her family's fraudulent rise, and then at me. She realized she had played a high-stakes game against a grand master while thinking she was playing against a child. Slowly, she stood up and lowered her head in a bow that cost her every ounce of her soul. "I understand, madam," she whispered. The following Sunday, the Ngugi family held a reconciliation lunch. This time, the setting was my penthouse. The table was set with the finest porcelain, and the guest list included the very people Beatrice had spent her life trying to impress. When I walked into the room, the chatter stopped. Beatrice stood up immediately. She didn't wait for me to approach. She walked to the edge of the dining area and stood perfectly still. "Everyone," she announced, her voice projected for the whole room to hear, "I would like to propose a toast to my daughter-in-law, Madam Elena. She is the brilliance behind our family's continued success and the most formidable woman I have ever had the honor of knowing." The guests clapped, whispering about the sudden shift in power. I took my seat at the head of the table, the seat Beatrice used to claim as her birthright. She sat to my left, serving me the first portion of the meal with shaking hands. She looked at me, a silent plea for mercy in her eyes. I smiled at her, a cold, regal expression that signaled her nightmare was only beginning. I had my husband, I had my empire, and I had the woman who called me a nobody acting as my most loyal servant. As I sipped my champagne, I realized that being a nobody was the best disguise I ever wore. The Ngugi legacy was now mine to command, and I intended to rule it with an iron fist.
I kindly plead with our first-time viewers to kindly subscribe to our channel. And to our dearest subscribers, thank you for joining us again. Please help to like, drop a comment, and click on the notification bell to always get our new videos. Thank you.